Materials research is making better materials. Materials that are smaller, stronger, faster, smarter, and more. To advance our understanding of the world around us and improve lives everywhere. With almost 14,000 members, the Materials Research Society is the organization that brings them all together. From students to Nobel laureates, to collaborate, share research, and change the world. Now in Boston, Massachusetts, it's time for the 2019 MRS Fall Meeting and Exhibit. And we're MRS TV. It's another day here at the Hynes Convention Center, and we have plenty more exciting features and interviews for you right here on MRS TV. On the show today, we have renowned quantum theorist Sham, this year's Materials Theory Award winner, plus the art behind the science as we look at creating compelling visuals in your work. Let's take a look at some of the highlights.
Well, if you're able to integrate all these capabilities into a single material set or some hybrid material set, then you could really dramatically change the way we design soft robotics, the way we design sensing platforms.
Technology is moving so quickly. Not only in years anymore, it's in a matter of months. So our type of company, really, we need to keep ahead of the curve and try and understand what's out there.
The community of density functional theory, it's like the internet. It's easy to understand. Everybody get on it, and they extend things, they innovate. It's really wonderful.
For the science image, the questions I ask myself now: what tool or point of view shall I use? What shall I leave out? Those are two different things. It's easy to talk about it but you get so involved with your work, but step away and think, are my tools informing what I'm seeing? You can't be serious about your phone cameras. You can just do it whenever you want, but don't be serious. Well, I've changed my mind. It's amazing what we can do with phones.
We're taking you on location now to Hall D at the Hynes Convention Center, where we're speaking to Feliz Frankel. Feliz, great to see you.
It's wonderful to be here.
Now, you discussed the importance of compelling and accurate images in communication science and engineering concepts. Is this an aspect of science that gets overlooked?
Big time. No, it's very interesting. This generation of researchers, they understand the value of depicting their work in an accessible way, but they leave it to the last minute when they submit.
They're the social media generation.
Well, absolutely, yeah. But when it comes to submitting for their work in journal articles, for example, they don't give it the time that I think it warrants. I think they should be thinking about how they depict their work from the very beginning of their research.
So it's not an afterthought to the research, it's an integral part.
It should be, but I don't think that's happening quite yet.
And that's part of your mission.
That's
right?
my mission,
That's right.
so to speak.
Now, what are some of the elements of visual storytelling that researchers should keep in mind when they're communicating about their work?
One of the biggest problems is that researchers want to say everything. They want to show us all their images, all their data in one place. And they are assuming that we see what they want us to see. And that's not the case. We see everything. We see so much that we can't make any sense out of it. So I'm trying to get them to create a hierarchy of information. What can you leave out of your figure, for example, to make it more readable? It's actually not simple. They have to figure out what they could leave out, and they don't want to leave anything out.
Of course not, it's their research.
Exactly, yeah.
So are there any potential pitfalls, and I think you're touching on that, when using visuals to communicate scientific concepts?
The problem is, once again, they assume that we are seeing what they see. Even people in their own field will not necessarily see it because it's just so jam-packed with stuff.
Right.
So they've got to create an understanding of the communicative nature of their research.
Is this something you might want to ask a second opinion about because you're so close to the subject?
That is a great idea, and that's something we try to do on my campus at MIT. We actually have collaborative meetings where we present the visuals and then we trash them. No, not really.
Right.
But,
constructive criticism.
That's good. I like that. That's much better. Yeah, no, but it's showing it to others that is key. I'm glad you suggested that. Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
That's right.
So here at the MRS meetings, we typically feature a science as art competition where it's understood that there will be manipulation of imagery to enhance the artistic aspect of the image. But what are the concerns about enhancing an image, especially as it relates to science?
Well, that is a very long conversation. I am not an artist. I believe that the art is already in the science, and it's our mission in a way to reveal that science and if it's artful. The competitions that MRS runs is purely on art, creating what they call art. Like, for example, the SEMs look like Yoda. And to be frank with you, I'm not drawn to that kind of image. I think the science itself is beautiful enough. Sure. And perhaps enhancing an SEM with color is a means of pushing it for us to look at it.
That would be enough.
Yeah.
For you.
But always indicating that I've done something.
Gotcha.
Always, yeah.
Now, you presented a number of really compelling images, both here and in your published work. How can someone learn more about that or see more of those images, learn about you?
Thank you. Well, it just so happens that my new book, Picturing Science and Engineering, is published by MIT Press, and I really literally go through everything that I know. It is a big book, and it's actually very inexpensive, which I'm surprised about. But I sort of want to tell you all how to do it.
Yeah.
This is not difficult. It really isn't, and I'm trying to encourage the researchers to just spend more attention.
Feliz Frankel, so much for your time. It was a pleasure meeting and speaking to you.
A real pleasure. Thanks so much.
Great insight there from Dr. Frankel. Next, with more great visuals from microscopy and spectroscopy, let's go to West Virginia University. Before that, though, let's take another quick look at the full list of the institutions we visited around the world.
Most systems observe time reversal symmetry, which means if we change the direction of time, the physics doesn't change. So in optics, that means that the travel of light will be the same in both forward and backward directions. And this property is important for a lot of optical systems. For example, you want your antenna to be able to receive or emitting information to be the same. In optical communications, you want the information transformed in both directions to be the same, to be symmetrical. This property is not desirable in some cases. For example, if you link a laser to an optical system, you do not want the light to be reflected back into your laser, which can interfere its performance. In some cases, can even damage your laser. In order to break reciprocity, you have to break time reversal symmetry. Conventionally, this is done through the use of magneto-optical materials, and then you apply the magnetic field. But there are several drawbacks to this approach. The effect is typically weak. You need to use large devices, and that prevents integration with other devices, or make the integration with other devices challenging. Here at West Virginia University, we're investigating the application of direct materials to break reciprocity.
Direct materials are materials electronic properties look like the Dirac equation, so relativistic near the Fermi level. And because of that, they have special properties that are protected by symmetry and topology, and we're trying to use those. Another property is Berry phase, which acts like a magnetic field in momentum space. Spin valley locking is an important quantity where momentum and the spin of the electrons have a particular orientation to each other. What we're trying to do is actually break the time reversal symmetry through using magnetic fields or internal doping. One of the systems that we've been looking at is transition metal dicogynides and doped with non-magnetic systems such as copper, shown over there, which induces a magnetic field and breaks the valley symmetry.
We use molecular beam epitaxy and the chemical vapor phase deposition to make the materials. And then we use scanning tunneling microscopy to image the atomic structure and electronic properties of the films that we make. In addition, we'll also use another technique, which is angular result photoemission spectroscopy to map out the valence band structure of those materials.
In order to do optical characterizations, first of all, we generate light. So we have light out here from anywhere terahertz to visible wavelengths, cover several order of magnitude of different frequencies. For the Dirac material that we're interested in, what we will do is send a terahertz light toward it. We ask the question of how does the polarization of the light change after it goes through the material, especially as we add on magnetic field or the material has magnetization on itself. And we find out that the material, as the light goes through, it has a fixed direction of a polarization rotation, which will be a great key to show there is a non-reciprocal property going on, which is so-called Faraday rotation. And we map that as a function of frequency, as a function of temperature, and all of them will tell us how good is this material in regard of making non-reciprocal optical devices.
We use electromagnetic modeling to study the way that waves propagate through and around objects, and we need a material model that captures the correct physics of the material and how electromagnetic waves interact with that material. So we solve Maxwell's equations, which describe electromagnetic phenomena, and we solve them numerically. And the key ingredient in this project is to have the correct material response. We look for a response that basically goes one direction. In the graphic behind me, we have an interface, and there is a sharp discontinuity that normally the wave, not only would it go both directions from the source, but upon encountering the discontinuity, the wave would backscatter and also diffract energy into both the upper and lower regions. So one nice aspect of these materials, not only are they unidirectional, but they're backscattering immune because we operate in the so-called band gap, or the bulk band gap of the structure. Energy is going in one direction and it hits a sharp discontinuity. Instead of reflecting or scattering, it's forced to go around that discontinuity, which is really a kind of a magical thing.
In this group, you get to study all sorts of different projects. We do topological insulators, superconductors. I work a lot with oxides.
Most exciting thing for me working on this project is being able to grow these 2D materials and using these STM and APES to actually probe their unique or spatial characteristics.
For the near future, we'll try to achieve the edge plasma. And then also at the same time, we're also looking into some other material system and the different mechanism to achieve the same goal as well.
Joining us here today, we have Mike Maddock and Leanne Go. And Leanne, you're with Innovate UK. It's a pleasure to have you here representing that. Tell me a little bit about that organization and purpose.
Sure. So Innovate UK is the UK government's innovation agency. We fund business-led R&D, business-led innovation. I am their advanced materials lead, so I look after their advanced materials program, and part of that is our graphene program. We've spent on the order of 40 million pounds in graphene in the last few years, just on businesses, looking at graphene applications. And one of the things they've told me that they would like is more international opportunities and more opportunities for collaboration. So I have brought this week to Boston a group of 14 UK businesses working in graphene application who want to learn more about the innovation landscape in Boston, who want to learn more about what what venture capital is like and raising money, who want to learn more about who they could work with in town. And the MRS, of course, is one place where they could really find some partners. So that's what we're doing.
You're absolutely right. Mike, you're one of the representatives brought along for the ride. So tell me about why exactly you're here. What are you hoping to get?
Well, we're a high-performance engineering business that provides solutions for our clients. So we're really heavily engaged now in looking at graphene and how we can unlock the potential of graphene for our clients for solutions that are required here and now, but also solutions for 20, 30 years in the future. And so working with Innovate UK, Innovate UK basically will unlock the potential by funding high-risk projects. So therefore we build a relationship with Innovate UK, we'll put an application in on a potential research project, they'll review it, and then hopefully they'll fund it, and whilst funding it, takes the risk out and de-risks and help us draw in other investors as well.
So it's a positive relationship.
Absolutely, yes.
And have you noticed that you're able to do more things with an organization like Innovate UK?
No, they're really generating the research because, you know, especially in the UK, there's a little bit of an adverse or a fear of investing and a fear of taking things forward. So when you work collaboratively and you get the support from Innovate UK, when you've got areas that are high risk, but there's a real potential for a high return, so the old risk-return benefit, then they can take some of that away by the funding.
Now, Leanne, what is your connection to the MRS, Materials Research Society?
Okay. So first, I'm a material scientist. I trained as...
That's a good connection.
Exactly. I'm trained as a physical chemist, but I did my PhD on surface science and nanoscience. And then I spent my career in industry at spin-outs, at British spin-outs, all of them trying to commercialize novel materials. So, so the MRS is sort of, you know, is a bit of a home in terms of, in terms of my, my background.
Now, what brings you to this meeting in particular?
So, so the MRS was a good anchor for us for this visit, right? Because everybody's in town for MRS. So, so we can have, you know, we had a reception last night where, you know, we invited a bunch of people who were in town that they could otherwise not get to meet, things like that. So, so for this, it's a good anchor for us.
And Mike, how's it been going for you? I mean, you mentioned graphene. Are you learning things? Are you seeing what you were hoping to see?
Yes.
Yeah, short answer, yes.
Yes, short answer, yes, yeah. The reason I hesitate is because technology is moving so quickly. You know, not only in years anymore, it's in a matter of months. So our type of company, really, we need to keep ahead of the curve and try and understand what's out there. And when you're working with clients, they tend to only measure themselves in the environment in which they operate and the competitors that they're operating against. They don't have that holistic view and understand what's out there in the marketplace because it's just moving so quickly. So therefore, we try and keep ahead of that curve, but also therefore, we'll look to create those solutions. And it is about collaboration, it's not about competition. You know, we really need to unlock the potential of graphene for the whole of for our countries and also for the globe. And it has some real opportunities from commercial aircraft right out to CO2 capture.
Very good. Leanne, final question. How can someone who's interested in engaging with Innovate UK find out more information? Where can they go? So
you can go to our website. If you just Google Innovate UK, you'll get to our website. We are being very well supported by the British Consulate General here in Boston. So if you go to them, they'll be able to point you to me or somebody who's interested. The Department of International Trade here would also be able to put you in touch.
A lot of avenues.
Yep. And of course, if you see any of these guys around, just
grab them.
Yeah, exactly.
Leanne, Mike, enjoy your stay. It was great talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Now from innovation in the UK back here to the US as we look at a collaboration between 5 national labs to improve hydrogen science across the country. It's the Hydrogen Materials Advanced Research Consortium, or HiMark.
Hydrogen is an industrial commodity that is used worldwide to make everything from plastics to fertilizer. But it's also a really intriguing fuel. It's beginning to be used in passenger vehicles, but this is a very challenging problem.
We're trying to develop a new infrastructure. You're looking at a whole new technology that eventually will replace a century-old technology that is very well developed.
Hydrogen storage is probably one of the greatest scientific challenges of our time. These materials are extremely complex. It's really beyond the capabilities of any one institution.
The only way you're going to attack this complex problem is by bringing in the best scientists that you can to work on it.
A few years ago, the Department of Energy recognized this problem, and they realized that even though a lot of effort had been invested to try to discover effective materials, we really didn't understand how they work. And that's the whole point of HiMark. HiMark has brought together 6 national laboratories that have complementary capabilities. Our purpose is to try to tackle and solve these fundamental scientific problems using state-of-the-art synthetic methods, supercomputing, and characterization tools that allow us to look at all of these different length scales and understand the processes that are controlling how these materials behave.
Historically, really, there are 2 kinds of materials that store hydrogen very well. There are sorbents and there are metal hydrides.
Sorbent is a solid substance that's very porous, and it's particularly good at soaking up gas molecules, and that will help densify the gas in the tank.
Metal hydrides, as their name suggests, they're really just metals that form very nice bonds to hydrogen. And kind of the magic of them, and the reason why they're interesting, is because they store hydrogen very densely. I often talk about these as kind of like a sponge for hydrogen.
And so our goal is to make a solid material that would go inside of this tank and allow us to drop the pressure from 700 bar to, say, 100 bar max pressure. And if we can do that, then that will allow us to use a cheap, lightweight, conformable tank. So you can use all the small bits of the car to store hydrogen, and it'll cut down on all that energy for compressing the hydrogen to very high pressures.
Synthesizing nanoscale materials that have exactly the same properties over and over again is a big problem, very difficult. That's one of the things that HiMark is working on, is to make metal hydrides in environments that are consistent over and over again.
A lot of the strategies we're looking at are things like nano-confinement. How do we take a hydrogen storage material, put it in a confining matrix, have smaller particles that then have much faster and better performance? So we're doing a lot of guidance on the computational side and trying to understand how do materials behave when we make them small and we confine them in a matrix. We're also looking at trying to understand materials that perhaps initially work well but then stop working later on, or have very slow performance later on in their cycling. Can we understand something about the period of time when the materials are actually working well, and can we engineer then the materials so that that behavior is maintained throughout the entire cycling?
HiMark utilizes a wide range of cutting-edge characterization tools that are unprecedented, I would say, in the history of hydrogen storage research. For example, we have techniques that consist of infrared spectroscopy, a so-called drifts technique, that allows us to look at materials that are not normally penetratable with infrared light. We also have techniques such as solid-state NMR at Pacific Northwest National Lab that allows us to look at individual chemistry inside hydrogen storage materials as they change. And then we come to places like this. We're here at the Advanced Light Source to learn with X-rays about the interior workings of hydrogen storage materials as they're functioning. And so all of this suite of techniques allow us to really dig into the details about how hydrogen storage materials are functioning, and then help us understand, what are the bottlenecks in those processes that either slow the introduction of hydrogen or its removal.
It's not just storage on the vehicle. The Department of Energy has a program called H2 at Scale, which is looking at the entire problem from production to storage to utilization.
The Hydrogen at Scale initiative is looking for hydrogen carriers to be able to do things beyond fuel cell vehicles. Looking at things to be able to, for power generation, storing hydrogen so you can do power generation later, or making ammonia, so doing ammonia, so upgrading biofuels and biomass type of materials. So it's a much larger part of the DOE mission.
We are trying to focus our efforts in HiMark on the things that are going to make the most difference. And we feel an imperative to do that. We know this is a big problem and we want to solve it.
I'm excited about a future where we don't have to stare at the scoreboard for where energy is coming from and what's going on all the time.
Someday, 50 years from now, maybe one of my kids will be driving a fuel cell car and they can go, well, yeah, my dad was working on those a long time ago.
Joining us now, we have Rob Shepard and Phil Buskell. Good to see you both, gentlemen.
You too.
Thank you. Now, you're leading the MRS staging group on responsive and adaptive materials. We want to start with the basics. So what exactly are responsive and adaptive materials?
That's a really good question. So what we define as responsive and adaptive materials are just simply materials and material composites that change their physical properties in response to a stimuli. That could be magnetic, optical, heat. And then what happens is the material will absorb that energy and then change its properties accordingly. And it can either be an autonomic response or a programmed one, depending on the application.
And Phil, I got the impression this was not an easy question to answer in 30 seconds or so, but did you want to add to that?
Right, I think what we're really excited about leading the staging group is that we have a plethora of materials that have these different responsiveness, but how can we introduce a level of hierarchy of control and feedback to really have a sense, decision-making process and a response that these materials can achieve by themselves or in some sort of composite fashion.
So what are some of the potential outcomes of the emerging field?
Well, if you're able to integrate all these capabilities into a single material set or some hybrid material set, then you could really dramatically change the way we design soft robotics, the way we design sensing platforms. And so it could really, as far as the Air Force's perspective, which is where I'm coming from, it really changes the swap game, size, weight, and power constraints for the different competencies and capabilities we're trying to provide the warfighter.
Now, Phil touched on it, but Rob, tell me what sort of technologies or devices might the consumer see out of this field?
Yeah, from a consumer level, we're seeing advances in robotics that could really up their game with new materials for human-robot interactions. You could also think of automatic acoustic responses to a room. You could have absorbing materials that change to reflective, depending on what the mood you're trying to create. You could also think of the same thing optically as well.
Now, as part of the new MRS staging group on this topic, what sorts of activities are you looking to engage in?
Yeah, so what we want to do is take this staging area, responsive and adaptive materials, and really perfuse it throughout the materials community and reach people that haven't normally thought of what they do as fitting into responsive and adaptive. We're going to do that through social media, through publications, through normal things like symposia at MRS. Try to reach people at MRS, but also across communities to like the American Chemical Society. People that might go there, maybe think about coming to MRS instead.
And as the staging group ramps up, what types of volunteers are you looking for?
Really energetic, creative individuals that want to take ownership of their own research and foster it into a new space that could engage a larger community.
And if someone's out there and interested in volunteering, how can they get involved with the MRS Responsive and Adaptive Materials Staging Group?
Well, we have a Frontiers meeting Thursday night, or you can just simply email me at rfs247@cornell.edu, and I can give you plenty of activities to participate in.
Very good. Rob, Phil, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Coming up, we talk to renowned quantum theorist Sham. But first, let's take a look at the next generation of great scientists as we head to the Department of Physics at Wake Forest University.
I'm Hardik Pandey. I am a third-year grad student with the physics department at Wake Forest University.
I'm a fourth-year graduate student in the physics department.
I'm a second-year physics graduate student at Wake Forest University.
My name is Lada, and I'm the second-year graduate student.
I'm the third-year physics graduate student at Wake Forest University.
Wake Forest University, because of its small size, is a truly unique place for collegiality. People are trying to help each other, people are collaborating with each other, sharing equipment. And the physics department is one of the best examples of that collegiality.
The project I work on, the material was synthesized in the chemistry department. The characteristics were done in the engineering department, and I model it. Plus, our group works with UT Dallas people, Rutgers, and we are also working with theoreticians from University of Oslo in Norway.
Wake Forest invests in world-class research to further its Pro Humanitate mission.
Wake Forest, they have a supercomputer in downtown. So a compute cluster that I use every day.
We have invested in thematic centers such as the Center for Functional Materials, the Translational Science Center, the Center for Nanotechnology, the Center for Energy, Environment, and Sustainability.
In these centers we work on a wide array of materials such as organic electronics, solar cells, biomaterials, batteries, metal organic frameworks, thermoelectrics. These centers really operate on a level above the departments, and that allows us to break down these barriers between various fields. It also allows us to answer really big research questions that a single discipline may not be able to answer.
Nowadays, on the job market, certainly having the tools of working on a team are prized by both university environments as well as commercial entities.
One of the things that I'm really proud of is that a lot of the students who work in interdisciplinary research have to work to communicate their domain knowledge to other people outside of their discipline. They have to improve their communication skills. And this is a very highly marketable skill, regardless of which direction that they take their career.
Unlike some universities, Wake Forest University stresses both research and teaching. And part of teaching is mentorship.
I work with Dr. Timo Thornhauser.
My advisor, Dr. Carroll, was able to give me the opportunity to spend a summer at Los Alamos National Laboratory, where I worked on research that directly translated to what I do here.
I work with Professor Wana Jakascu, and she's an amazing person to work with.
These are relationships that are lifelong relationships. They are and they will be my students all their life.
Nothing is really more satisfying for us than to work closely with our students and to see them succeed.
We have a 96% graduation rate. Many of our groups have 4 to 10 publications per student by the time they graduate. Another very important outcome is also the placement of our students. We are able to place our students in great jobs.
Many of them have gone on to start companies with us, and that part of graduate school is exciting because you don't have to put your ideas on hold for 4 or 5 years. You can start them right here in our own graduate program.
There are so many things amazing about the department. There are endless possibilities.
It's an exciting time for the field.
Come check us out, and we are sure you will like what you see. Become a member of the Wake Forest family.
Joining us today, we have the 2019 MRS Materials Theory Award winner. This is Sham. Lou, great to meet you, and congratulations on the award.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Now, your award citation notes your pioneering contributions to the quantum theory of molecules and solids, and specifically, it notes the development of the Kohn-Sham formulation of density functional theory. Tell us about your work that led to the award.
In that period, this is the early 60s, there was an interesting dilemma, as it were. The electron interactions theory was very good, but it has to be done in the model of a uniform distribution of positive charge. On the other hand, the people who can find the energy structure of the electrons under the influence of the nuclei, they do it very well if they can assume the electrons are more or less independent of each other. They can field the others as a field, as it were, but not individual particles. The tension between the two sides were palpable. They were kind of, you know. So then I went to La Jolla, postdoc with Walter Kohn. He was still on sabbatical. 6 months later, he came home and gave a seminar on the density functional theory, the theorem that he and Pierre Hornberg just did. That was manna from heaven. That would be our method to integrate the two effects of electrons under the influence of nuclei and under the influence of mutual interaction.
Now, what led you to your particular field of study? What drew you in?
I was an undergraduate at Imperial College London, and I majored in math. And I always thought physics was terrible because they give you a formula and then say it can be proven. I couldn't understand anything they said. It was all could be proven.
Right.
Then in the third year, which was our final year of the degree, suddenly we were taught physics that was based on mathematical formulations. It was wonderful.
And the light bulb went off. Now, what are some of the applications or devices that have resulted from the work you've done?
Well, it's actually quite broad. A lot of physical sciences and even biologists are now using it because a lot of things depend on the electron. It is probably the most intimate particle that we are aware of. Your watch and everything, right? Sure. It's all electronic. To give you an example, it started with atoms. The people who do optics on atoms were quite appreciative of the density functional theory method of working. And then chemistry, of course, all the chemical molecules, and they really develop, based on this, but develop ways to calculate things. The surprising thing was that they also apply it to nuclei. So like David Thaler told me, oh, he used it to understand the isotope of calcium. This is now nuclear particle, not electron particle.
Yeah. What do you think the future of the field is?
It's boundless in a way, because if you look at it, don't you think, I would think that the community of density functional theory, it's like the internet. It's easy to understand, everybody get on it, and they extend things, they innovate. You know, it's really wonderful. So I think there's going to be things like that. It might even spill off from materials to processes, which means that we can do dynamics and therefore have engineering. It's
a very dynamic field. Congratulations again, Lou Sham, 2019 MRS Materials Theory Award winner.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. Another busy day here at the Hynes, but now it's time to leave the convention center to prepare for day 4 as we get ready for another exciting show for you right here on MRS TV. Tomorrow we talk anisotropic nanoscale materials, low-dimensional electronic interfaces, as well as catch up with the 2019 MRS Fall Meeting Chair about how it's all been going. Until then, keep watching on your hotel, on screens here at the Hynes, and of course online. We'll see you soon.
The Materials Research Society is pleased to announce that Gopal Rao, editor of MRS Bulletin, has recently been named a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Gopal has been recognized for his distinguished contributions to the fields of materials science and engineering, particularly for the worldwide dissemination of subjects that help society to understand innovation and impactful technology. He, along with the other new fellows, will be honored in Seattle on February 15th during the AAAS Fellows Forum.
Nominate an outstanding paper published in 2019 for JMR's 6th Annual Paper of the Year. The award recognizes excellence in advancing materials knowledge through written scholarship. The nomination deadline is January 17th, and the award will be presented at the 2020 MRS Spring Meeting. The Materials Research Society Foundation would like to thank all of the individual donors and these corporate partners whose contributions support the foundation and its mission. Every donor is important. Every gift makes an impact.
Don't just read our journals, contribute to them. By submitting your work to an MRS journal, you'll reach a global audience with an impact that will extend for many years. MRS publishes cutting-edge research, perspectives, and review articles, along with books and textbooks. Visit Booth 100 in the exhibit hall Tuesday through Thursday to find the MRS journal that meets your materials topic and stage of research. Meet the commissioning editors, learn about new author services, discounted open access for MRS members, and much more. It's not too late to submit an abstract for the 2020 MRS Spring Meeting. Late news, hot topic abstracts will be accepted from December 18 to January 15. Be sure to submit your abstract and join us in Phoenix for a perfect week of sun, scenery, and science. Pre-registration opens early January. We hope to see you there.
Thank you to these 2019 MRS Fall Meeting Platinum and Gold supporters. Your support of a symposium session helps symposium organizers provide a high-quality technical program and encourage participation from around the world. Visit the MRS website to learn more about the MRS Symposium Support Program and how you can share in the Society's commitment to the advancement of scientific research.
MRS Energy and Sustainability is pleased to welcome Shirley Ming of the University of California, San Diego as its new editor-in-chief. MRS Energy and Sustainability addresses broad perspectives in energy and sustainability as they relate to the impact of materials research on society. The journal accepts review and original research articles by invitation or proposal. For more information on the journal, visit mrs.org/energy sustainability journal.